Hi, good morning everybody. Can you hear me? Is it working? Yeah? Good. Right, well I hope you'll enjoy this. This is something very different. But first of all, I'd like to introduce my good friend Lorne Campbell. Lorne is the designer of our World Water Speed Record project, and he'll be taking all the technical questions when we get to them a little at the end. Okay then, right. This is all about innovation. And this is an example of innovation. This is our car, Thrust SSC, where we broke the sound barrier in 1997. It's only ever been done by us. The Americans and others have tried, but nobody's been able to do it before. We've now held the world land speed record now for 40 years. And that record was done 26 years ago. Anyhow, I've been asked to speak about innovation, so let's have a go. Did you know that the UK defence budget, which includes all those ships, all the army, aircraft carriers, F-35s, is just £60 billion? That's the scale, okay? Our debt interest budget in this country is £116 billion. So this tells you everything about what's going on in our country. We just have not got the act together, and we've got to really work like hell now to change the place. We can't live with debts of this sort of level. Otherwise, we're just not going to get anywhere. We all know that we've got to be promoting innovation and engineering big time, like never before. The UK motor industry is making progress, you'd be glad to know. We're about 40% up. And aviation, well, the airliner orders basically about the same as 2014. So that's on the up as well. But in Britain, we do have a deeply ingrained risk-averse culture, which really isn't helpful at a time when everybody else is innovating. So often we talk to other Brits, and people just say, well, you can't do things like the sort of projects we do. It won't work, or there'll be too many problems, or whatever. But basically, they always talk about the downside in Britain. Whereas if you talk to our American friends, they always speculate about what might be possible and what actually can be done. And of course, the British media love failure. This isn't at all helpful. It really isn't. At the moment, of course, we've got the HS2 disgrace, and the media are going to have great fun with that as that's all pulled apart. But maybe there are a few lessons to be learned there, and maybe we're going to see some better leadership. But it doesn't encourage people to take risk. We've got to encourage people to innovate and take risk. Now, all this becomes absolutely fascinating. Hang on. I haven't got a next. Ah, there we go. All this becomes fascinating when large global corporations start taking dynamic risk, in other words, fast-changing risk. These organizations are in part and general large-scale command and control cultures, really optimized for trading and profit, which makes it doubly difficult for them to actually innovate. Toyota is pushing forward with the solid-state EV batteries, which should lead to EV ranges of around 740 miles and a recharge time of less than 10 minutes. I mean, it's fantastic. If they can achieve that, it's really going to move forward. But this is very interesting because Toyota realized they can't do it normally. So what they've done is they've set up a specialist company to do the solid-state battery program. It's really interesting. Normally these big companies think that they can do it on their own. They can't. You have to have specialist organizations. We specialize in unlimited world record breaking. And in record breaking, you have to innovate. You absolutely have to innovate if you're going to get a world record. You can't live by what we call empirical design. In other words, doing something which somebody's done before and modifying it slightly. You just won't get the margin, the performance margin. You've got to have a substantial more performance margin over the best the world has ever seen. The two thrust teams, as I said, have held the world land speed record now for 40 years. And if you're going for a world land speed record, it's very interesting. What you've got to do is produce a safe car and make it go fast, not produce a fast car and try and make it go safe. That way lies disaster. So let's just talk about thrust 2. First of all, That's the BAC Lightning Fighter. We use the upper engine of that in the Thrust 2 car. Here's Thrust 2. It's a great little car. I really enjoyed this. It weighs 4 tons. It's got 35,000 horsepower, okay, and it's got biplane tail fins, and it peaked out at 650.88 miles an hour. I know that because I drove it. Acceleration 2G, so in other words, 2G acceleration, 0 to 42 miles an hour in 1 second, 0 to 84 in 2. That's the level of acceleration. But deceleration is really interesting. We decelerated around 6G. So you're losing around 130 miles an hour per second. It's quite a ride, and you get an extraordinary thing called the somatographic illusion, which upsets your inner ears, and makes you feel as if you're driving straight down the middle of the world. We were a lucky project in some ways, because of course it's a transonic car. It's not a supersonic car, it's a transonic car. And it's of course limited by its Mach number, and our Mach number on that car was 0.84. It wouldn't go faster than 0.84% of the 84% of the speed of sound. And while we were doing that final runs for the record, the temperature in the Nevada desert suddenly went up. The sun came out, the temperature went up. That was very helpful because it moved the speed of sound up, which of course is temperature dependent, and that gave us a bit more speed. And we hit our design speed, which was 650 miles an hour. We actually beat it. We took Thrust 2 as fast as it would go, and on the last run of all, basically we discovered I was within 7 miles an hour of takeoff. So I'm very glad to be here anyhow. So there we go. Then we move on to Thrust SSC. This was the big battle to achieve the first ever supersonic land speed record, and we were dealing with 2 very well-financed competitors. Don't worry about money. Don't worry about money and the fact that this lot have got a lot of money. Money actually slows you down. You've actually got to be very focused on what you're doing, and you need just enough money to do the job. So we were the first ever to use CFD on a car and also to do rocket testing. So we'll show you a video here of doing the rocket testing at Pendine in South Wales. Now this had never been done before. We're going to run this car up to supersonic speed. "24 rockets. There we go. Now don't blink. Do not blink, otherwise you'll miss it.
Only function, wait.
That is 0 to 820 miles an hour in 0.8 of a second. This is proper motor racing. This is the real thing. Now the extraordinary thing about this is there's an extraordinary correlation between the rocket test data and the CFD data. And here's the original document, and we've got a straight line correlation. One proved the other. It's the first time anybody's ever seen anything like that. And that proved that we could actually move ahead with the design of the car. Very interesting car, twin jets, and with rear wheel steer, okay, and active ride, so we could vary the instance of the car according to the Mach number. It was a very interesting program. The cross-sectional area on a car like that is absolutely crucial. When you're computing the cross-sectional area, you've got to deduct the area of the intakes. Okay, so you end up with something like a cross-sectional area which is like a spectacles frame. It's probably the best way of describing it. They always say that if Concorde had had another 4 inches in diameter, it would never have reached New York. Anyhow, we got it. And a high-level NASA official likened our project to putting an astronaut in space from a 0 star. We moved on to Bloodhound. Bloodhound I'm very, very proud of. It should have got up to 1,000 miles an hour. But failure to pay a grant by the UK government lost us our main sponsor, who was not impressed, and we couldn't recover the loss on the scale. I actually had to put the whole project into administration, which was very, very sad. Later, the Secretary of State actually signed off for it, but it was too late to actually save the project. It's very sad. Our government is so slow and so unfocused that they simply don't understand what they were doing. It was a disaster. 11 years of work, the work of 400 companies was just wasted. Later on, the project was bought and it was run to 628 miles an hour, which was something, but unhappily they got to that speed, and then for some unaccountable reason they then stopped. So that's it. And you can see the car at the museum in Coventry. We learnt a lot about innovation. It's always going to be difficult in UK. I've often why it's so difficult to get money in UK. Is it something about the old bankers' culture? I don't know, and the excessive financial caution. We've got to change. We've really got to change this place and get on with it. And one of the key things is changing the old command and control management systems for basically something rather different. I used to teach management years ago, and this brilliant man is Abraham Maslow. Maslow, in 1941, created a thing called the hierarchy of needs. Does everybody understand this? Know about this? It really works. And what you've got to do is get your people working right at the top, which is known as self-actualization. That's the level at which you get the highest levels of personal satisfaction and personal achievement. Very difficult to do in a command and control company because you're always micromanaged. With our standard systems, we set up different flat companies, basically an inclusive company, and we encourage people to work like this. And it's amazing. People just change completely when they get going on this. And it's an extraordinary situation. It's the highest motivator ever. One of the interesting things about Maslow is he said that in a normal company, only about 15% of the employees and workers in the company get to that high level of actualization, self-actualization. And what we have to do with our projects is we have to get everybody up to that level. And it is the most exciting thing you can do. One of the problems I had with it at one stage is stopping everybody working on Sundays because they were getting so tired. Anyhow, let's move on. Right. The next thing that we've really got to understand is the workings of a company structure. If you are really innovating, then you and your people are way beyond the reach of so-called experts. You've got to push ahead of that. You've got to come up with something completely new, and you really are on your own. It's very important to understand that. The experts can't help you anymore. They can give you a bit of advice, but otherwise they'll be guessing. And so as we move on to the next project, we'll explain to you how we have to face this. One of the interesting big project mistakes is to allow the engineers to work in a silo. Now this is very, very interesting because one of the key things about innovation is what we call lateral communication. Not communicating with the outside world, but communicating across the company so that everybody knows what is actually happening. So often in these organizations, the engineers work in their silo and basically they don't communicate. We've had a lot of problems with that. We've got to change engineers a bit. They've got to realize they've got to communicate with everybody else. And so often this solves the problem. It's often a situation where the engineers get into big trouble. They've maybe take a wrong turn. Something's gone wrong. They don't know how to sort it out. And you need comment from the rest of the organization to say, hey, you've got a problem here. Have you tried this? Have you thought of this? We know somebody had the same sort of problem, so they applied it an answer that way. It was very, very interesting. I worked on one project, which wasn't my project, years ago. It was another record project, and the designer basically had no contact with the workshop. It was absolutely extraordinary. The workshop were a lot of Formula One people. They were coming up with some really smart ideas, but the guy just wouldn't listen to them. I thought it was absolutely appalling, and I was very, very sorry. I was rather glad to leave that organization, I can tell you. But it's all about communication. So once, at one stage on the Thrust SSC project, we got the car up to just under the speed of sound, okay, and things were going wrong. Things were going wrong because Andy Green, the driver, had realized that there was a fault in the software which was controlling the incidence of the car. It was raising the incidence of the car to get a small down thrust at, according to the Mach number. And he realized there was a fault. And the fault might drop the back of the car, and if it dropped the back of the car would fly, and that would be the end of the car and Andy, so he was particularly interested in this one. And we were running out of time. Winter was coming on the deserts in Nevada. We were in deep, deep trouble, and the engineers were insisting that they were going to have to redesign the hydraulic system in order to cope with this. And one man, Nick, who ran the workshop, said, "That's ridiculous," he said. Basically, all we want to do is change this part and that part, and it'll work. And we all looked at each other and thought, "You're joking, it's really as simple as that." And of course it was. So we made Nick's changes, and we went on to break the sound barrier. Very interesting. So communication, this lateral communication is crucial. So if you're involved in innovation, for God's sake, don't let the engineers work in a silo and communicate right across the company. It was very interesting too that if you start working in a world-first project like this, it develops an awful lot of new world-first things that come with it because everybody else gets inspired by it. So for instance, we were the first to ever create a race car website with blogs, first in the world to do that. First ever example of end-to-end electronic trading. We were the first in Britain to do that. First ever global internet-driven fundraise, which we did. We raised enough money to fund 100 tons of fuel for the Antonov aircraft we had. And when we were successful, we had the largest website in the world for 2 or 3 days, I think it was. That's before Google came along. I was always very critical about realizing the value of these sort of projects. They generate vast media coverage. We've got some 80 million views on YouTube at the moment, and following in 200 countries. Of course, in the past, they were used really to make one person very famous. That seemed to be the sort of overall objective. But that seemed to me very, very uncomfortable, because really the success depends on the team, not necessarily the individuals. And the solution to all this came in the most extraordinary manner. Whoa, hang on. Sorry, I've missed that one. Let's have a look at this. This is breaking the sound barrier. Can we turn the sound right up, please? It's really scary standing there watching this come up like a large locomotive faster than any airplane you've ever seen.
I'd say that was fast. Okay, shoot one. Yes, we got it. Everything is going to be wonderful. SSC inquiry stopped, mile 13.5.
Thank you, copy. At station standby, SSC has stopped mile 13.5.
And there's the famous picture of the shockwave. Okay, we go back to talking about the purpose of a project like that. Well, of course, you're promoting engineering, aren't you? And you're inspiring people. But there's got to be a better reason than just trying to make somebody famous. And during the Bloodhound project, Thrust SSC driver Andy Green, we've got a Bloodhound picture here. Hello? There we go. During the Bloodhound project, Andy Green had somehow managed to wangle a meeting with the Minister of Defence's Minister for Defence Equipment and Support. This is a very magnanimous man with an enormous office and a huge budgets and a very, very large sofa which we sat on. We had the meeting with him, and we wanted a couple of Eurofighter engines. It didn't work out, and it was quite clear he wasn't going to help, so that was that. We were on our way to the door, having said thank you for the meeting, when he called us back. And he said, we've got an enormous problem in the Ministry of Defence. We can't recruit STEM educated people for the ministry. It's an absolute nightmare. It was his idea to set up the education program. So I said to the minister, yeah, fine, okay, we'll do that. That sounds like a really good thing. He was a bit surprised, because normally dealing with the civil service, it takes forever to get a decision. We made a decision instantaneously. And as we walked out the door, Andy said to me, what the hell have you gone and done? And I said, we've got a purpose. And so we put together an education program, and it was running by 2017 at 120,000 kids each year. So we took the car to Newquay in Cornwall to run it before all our followers and also for the schools. And we were there for some 3 days. And the last day was the education day. So we got a bit of video from the education day. This shows how you can basically excite school kids. There were some 300 or 400 on site at Newquay that day. So have a look at this.
It's going to be really nice to share our excitement that we've had over the last 3 weeks with the general public. I think they're going to be blown away.
So, right, we've only got about 5 minutes left, so I better hurry up. We've decided we're going to move on and do the most difficult record breaking of the lot, which is the world water speed record. We've been into this now for some 3 years. An enormous amount of research is going on, particularly in terms of aero research and hydrodynamic research, and we think we found a solution for a very, very different challenger. This is very interesting, and we're now moving across from all the theoretical stuff into the physical stuff. And so basically we've got models running. So this is a picture of one of our 90-mile-an-hour models. I think it's going to run. Oh, I don't know why that isn't working. Sorry, let's move on. And we're just in the middle of the development of the next one, which is the 25% model, and that's going to run at 220 miles an hour. From that, we're going to take the data and from the CFD and the hydro data, put it all together, basically put it through an AI arrangement to give us the best solution. And hopefully we should start building it in 2024. I hope, but of course research takes time and you've got to get it all right. I'd like to thank in particular our good friends at PRF Composites who've helped us enormously with this, with the models, and also they're going to help us with the build of the actual car. So it's a huge, huge project. I haven't really got time to talk to it in detail about it, and at the moment we don't know that we can do it. We're in the early stages, but it's looking pretty good. Just to give you a taste for this, here's a run-up test of our SPAY engine. We had to make sure it was going to run all right before we progress the project, so let's have a look at this. Had a hell of an effect on people, that really is, when you're standing next door to a large afterburning engine. And the engine team have got 50 years experience with this engine. It's a fantastic moment. There we go. Okay, so we're moving on to the water speed record. Can't tell you much about it at this stage, except the progress is going well and it's getting very interesting. I've been told we've run out of time, so that's pretty good. Come along to our stand and come along and talk to us about it all. And you might like to get hold of the book. That's the big book. That tells you how to innovate, all right? And we'll sign it for you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Sorry, Lorne, no time. Do you know? I don't know. It's you see up there.